Hello and welcome back to Darkstorm Rising. Today we delve back into the dark Lovecraftian labyrinths that are Death May Die. And as I'm painting who I'm painting today, there was only one t-shirt to adorn myself with, as we are painting the great Cthulhu himself. Now, I'm aware that many of you as well may also be in the current Kickstarter for the latest edition of Death May Die, and in that episode I've also purchased the big Cthulhu miniature. So this is going to give me a good feel for where I want to go with that miniature, as it's just a reduced version, but it'll give me a good feel for some of the aspects. So without further ado, we better get on with painting this guy. To the table! So here is the mighty Cthulhu. Now I'm going to do something I don't normally do. Now if you look, there's a little bit of a shine going on. Normally what I would do is I would paint this guy the night before, so that the black has plenty of time to dry. As you can see, this has been sprayed within the last sort of hour or so, and so we still haven't really completely dried in some places. But the video must be done, so what we'll do is we'll try and allow for that with our colour choices, as the wet black will tend to darken things off as it saturates through, but we'll just take our time, we'll work our way around, and we'll try and allow for that saturation. The first thing I want to do is generate some relief so I can actually see some of the detail on the miniature a bit clearer as I'm picking the colours and choosing where to go. So the first colour is Neutral Grey by Vallejo. I'm just going to get a nice broad brush and a little bit of tissue paper, don't want it too wet. And it is literally just to create some relief on the miniature, so we can reveal some of the details that are going on and just help us see where we're painting. I'm not going too heavy, just generally just giving a bit of relief to the miniature and just showing us what's happening. And as you can see, it's just picking out the relief on the miniature. So the first colour to go on, now we've given them some definition, will be again a Vallejo colour, and that's the US dark green. Got some on the palette here, and I've got a huge brush. Nothing subtle going to be going on. Just make sure there's not too much on the brush, and then we will just gently work our way around the model. I don't want to go on to the tentacles, so we're going to keep well away from those, but the rest of the model is going to get a fairly good dousing in the dark green, and I'll come back in a few moments. So you can see that we've been around most of the model now, and just to show you that I am using the large brush all the way around, there's nothing tidy going on just yet, and we will have some corrections to do because there's going to be a little bit of overspill because it's such a big brush. Essentially lots and lots of colour tapped into upper surfaces, and then as you come on to the undersides, just a bit more gentle with the brush strokes, just to get a little bit less of a push of the colour on there. And so that's more or less the model base coated, ready for the midtones and detailing to go on top. For our next changing colour, we're going up to golden olive, but what we will do, and here is my brush, I've gone to a size 2, and we're going to mix a little bit of golden olive in with the US dark green and just come up a tone or two lighter in colour. Just keep mixing until I'm happy with where we're going. Okay, we're starting to sort of get a definite change in colour there, so that will be noticeable on the model. Right, and so we're going to be nice and careful with our placement. probably slightly too large a brush for the detail I'm trying to apply, but hell, we'll work with it now. One of the things I'm going to try as we work around this model is hopefully to try and keep true to the box art. I love the box art and how dark it looks. I am going to be very tempted to come to some bright highlights, I'm afraid, but I think I will try to stay fairly dark, although I'll probably not be able to help myself and come a bit lighter. So we're literally going over, I don't know, maybe 90% of the model. We'll work our way around, just touching in highlights like we are doing. And this is going to be mainly on those upper surfaces, those things that would catch light. And where he's got like these areas of barnacles, we'll just tap onto there. We may change their colour slightly with time. And then these huge ropes of muscles, just catch that upper surface. And work our way around the rest of the guy. So as we continue our way around the model and you get to some of these larger surface areas, you don't need to quite such a detailed, and you can use the side of the brush just to pick up some of these more exposed areas and get those highlights in. Okay, it's a bit of a manky size 1 brush, but I've now dropped down to a size 1. I've now gone over to the Pure Golden Olive by Vallejo. And now we're going to pick out some of the higher areas. Just make sure there's not too much on your brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way around the model. And this time we're going to be a bit more picky about where we're aiming to get these highlights, and we're really going to cut down the amount of the model that we're pushing highlights on, and hopefully that will increase the fact that it looks like a dark model, because there's such a minimal amount of highlighting going on. I'll just catch these upper surfaces, and he's got so many wrinkles on it, this is going to take a little while. Okay, so I'll continue around with the golden olive and we'll come back in a few moments. So already we can start to see he's coming to life, already starting to fear for my sanity. But now what we're going to do is one of those sort of leap of faith moments as we play with a dangerous colour. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in some Magos purple. What I hear you say? Purple on green? Yeah, I'm afraid that's exactly what we're going to do. So in the recesses, like in the axilla, elbows especially, because we're going to work on elbows and knuckles later. So we'll pop a little bit on the elbow. Into any sort of recess that's going to be hidden away a bit. Decorate his undercarriage. Just at the backs of his legs and the underside of his legs here. I think probably we'll go right down the middle of his back as well. On the undersides of his arms, you can see I've already started our little play here. And on the underside of this arm as well. And into the palm of his hand, both sides. And then at the edges of where the tentacles are, just get a little bit more Magos out of the pot. Just on the edge of these tentacles, underneath the edge of his chest and into his armpit, give him some more shade in there. Okay, and we'll do his knees as well. We'll work on the knees a little bit later. And then probably in between his toes. And on to the next step. Our next choice of colour is lime green. I've already got a little bit here on the palette, just out of shot. And we're now going to go to even more extreme highlights. And just push all of those areas where the light would strike. What I will do is I'll just quick show you what we've done so far with the shading of the green. So as you look underneath the arms, virtually no paler green there. Again there on the undersides, especially with the Magos now on there, it's very dark. So we've got quite a lot of natural shading going on in there for us. But now what we're going to do is go to those extreme highlights and start to pick those out just to give even more relief to the model. And we'll just work our way gently around, picking out all the extreme highlights and trying to imagine a little bit as well where the angle of the sun is coming from. And you'll see I've started to work a little bit more dominantly on one side, and I think we'll pick the focus out on this side. Right, back in a few moments. Okay, so now we're ready for the extreme highlights. So for that I've gone over to Vallejo Yellow Green. And the brush I've dropped down to is a Army Painter Precise detail, just for better placement of the colour. And then again, what we're going to do now is go around the model, really just picking out the right side of the shadows, well sorry, the right side of the extreme highlights, and just dotting really and running a fine line over any of the upper areas. As you look around the model now, as we've gone sort of that slightly right hand view of the colour, you can see the left hand side of the head is slightly darker. We've picked out the highlights sort of all from this angle. The inside of that arm there is just a little bit more highlighted, and then if we flick onto the reverse side, this side is starting to look a lot darker in comparison. So we'll progress on. I'll just show you a little bit more, just so you can see the barnacles that are on his back, or whatever the hell they are. They're lit from the top, so I've just concentrated on the colour at the top and on the very bottom edge of the upper side, so you can see it gives them that depth as well. And what we'll do now is we'll work around just anything that's really extreme. We'll get a dab of the highlighter colour and just pull those colours through a little bit more before we go on to going back to the barnacles. So we can now see that actually there's quite a lot of strength in the light sort of catching across the figure, and then as we look at the reverse side, we're getting much darker in comparison. And I think for the skin tones, that's where we're going to leave it. And now we're going to move on to doing the knuckles, knees and elbows, for which I'm going to use the lime green we had earlier, and I'm going to mix it to start with a little bit of Emperor's Children. So I'll just grab some of that out. And just get that nice pink tone to it, bit of a fleshy green tone going on. Really dry the brush so we don't end up with loads of paint going on where we don't want it. And what we'll do is just gently over the knuckle areas, flesh tones on the knee are applied as well, and again over here, just catching up onto the skin around the knee as well. We'll leave the underside dark. Elbows. Catch it from the one side where the light will come from, will leave you opposite side dark. Okay. And then we're going to help pop the colour a little bit with a wash, and we're going to use So for the wash on the knuckles and the elbows, knees, we're going to use Caribou Crimson. Give that a bit of a shake. Just bring some over to the palette so I'm not having to mess around worrying about knocking over the pot. And we'll just get some Caribou Crimson. And then in and around the knuckle areas. Same again with the knees. Okay. And now for the highlights on the knees, the elbows, I'm going to use some elfic flesh, and that's going to be mixed with a tiny bit of the green, and then grab some of the Caribou Crimson. Make a bit of a blend that's going to hopefully tie the colours and make it look like it's a natural highlight mixture, blend of those colours that we've already used, and so it shouldn't stand out too much, but will give us a little bit of definition. And we'll overlap it onto some of the skin that's already there, and again just help tie all these colours together. And I'll go around the knuckles and the elbows. So that's now set the knees and the elbows are slightly different. And I am going to just get a little bit of the elfic flesh and just try and get that colour a little bit brighter, just for some accent to make those elbows look a little bit less two-dimensional. Give them a little bit more depth. Same on the knuckles. Anything that's going to catch light, just a little bit of accentuation of the colour, and then we'll drop a little bit of Caribou back on it again, just to give that sort of redness to the tissue. Just got to be careful that we don't take the highlights away that we've just done. We're just dabbing that around the edges of what we've just done. Same on the edges of the elbow. And I'll call those done, and we'll move on to the tentacles. So now we've got all the skin done. Like I said, we're going to work on the tentacles, and what I want to do straight away is to set some really, really dark tones in all the shadow areas of the tentacles. So for that, we're going to use some hexed lichen by Vallejo, and literally that's going into all the bases of the tentacles, into all the and this is a really saturated colour, so you do have to be a bit careful when you work anywhere near the skin, because this will really, really take over. And then anywhere that's sort of recessed and shadowy, we're going to catch, and also anything that's sort of overhanging underneath it, just a bit of the lichen as well. So if we look, this tentacle here is overhung by these ones above it, so the beginning of that where it's overhung, and in the gap, all of these ones here, yeah, and again here. So basically anything that we want to create a really dark shadowy look to, this lichen's going exactly that place. Just don't load your brush too heavily, or else you're going to make life hard for yourself undoing any over paint. While the hex lichen is still wet, we're going to now apply Screamer Pink to the rest of the tentacles. And just try and make sure that we don't catch too much of the surrounding tentacles, trying to leave like a little bit of a delineation, like a line that describes where that tentacle is, so that rather than just a mass of pink, that we do actually have these little boundary lines that let the eye do the work, and it will inform us that this is a writhing mass rather than like just a blob of pink. And we'll slowly work our way around, being as careful as we can. And I'll come back to you once I've got them all covered. So having carefully gone around the tentacles, trying to make sure there's that, if you can see each tentacle. I've tried to make sure that they're left visibly separated. Next colour is going to be Emperor's Children, and although I have tried to make them look like they're separated, I also have made sure that I've coloured up to the edges so that they do look, you know, fully coloured. So I'm going to mix a little bit of the Emperor's Children with a little bit of the Screamer Pink. Make sure there's only a small amount on the brush, and then we're going to go back over the tentacles and just gently on any upper surface draw some lines. Just to reinforce the tentacles. I'll go around the rest of them and I'll be back in a sec. So having redrawn the lines all the way around the model, all over the tentacles, I'm now going to the Screamer Pink all on its own. Really try and get a fine tip on your brush, and maybe even drop to a size smaller and just gently work over so that the higher upper surfaces we want to promote the shine on the tentacles. And we'll work our way around and back shortly. Our next colour is going to be fulgrim pink. And slap a bit of that on the palette. And we're going to drop to a really fine brush, again to detail brush. And so now what we're going to imagine is where the light again is catching on the edges. And we will work our way around the upper edges of the tentacles on that right hand side. Okay, so I'll be back in a few minutes again. Okay, so that's now got them all looking like the lights again coming in from this side. And now I just want to darken the end of the tentacles off. So we're going to return to the Magos purple and slap some on the palette. Try not to get the model. Make sure I put the lid back on. And then at the very bottoms of the tentacles, literally picking each one out individually. And next we'll move on to doing his barnacles. Hopefully that's looking pretty good. So for the barnacles, just being careful because I'm waiting for those to dry, but we're going to go back to the fulgrim pink, and every single barnacle, this is going to be a painful process, every single barnacle we're just going to pop, very careful with the brush, we're going to pop a dot of fulgrim pink in the recess. And then work our way around all of them. So back in about 3 or 4 days. See you soon. So we have now given Cthulhu a serious dose of the measles. Now this is one of those trust the process moments, because we're now going to take them to the final colour by adding in Volupus pink. And we'll get some of that onto the palette because we need to thin it out a bit. A bit of water on, and then we're going to work our way all the way around them, filling that, because the pink will highlight it for us, the fulgrim pink, but when we put that in, it will sink into the recess, leaving you an automatic highlight, because the water tension will pull it into the middle. And if you get a bit too much of a blob in there, just take the water off, stick it back in, and it'll just pull some of the water out for you, or the paint even. But the bigger ones will be virtually perfect just by blobbing the paint in. And like on that one there, a little bit of an overrun, don't like that. Water on the brush, dilute it down and get rid. And back into the paint. Just work our way around all of these. Didn't take half as long as I thought it would, and neither will this, so I'll be back very shortly. So now we've been round and turned them much more into like octopoid suckers, but now we just need the finishing touch, which is to go back to the Emperor's Children. Make sure your brush has got not too much paint on at all, and then once the suckers have dried, if you just dab with the side of the brush on the edge, you'll just put your little highlight on the ring, and that is the suckers finished. I'll work round and then we're on to the wings. So I'll just do one panel of the wings and show you, and then I'll work out the rest of them from there. So right in the corners of the wing and under the edges, a thin line of hex lichen, the purple we used earlier. And that's just going to give us our border to our wings. Get a bit of the hex lichen and mix it in with the screen pink that we used earlier as well. And then we'll get a bit of the Emperor's Children using the same brush. And this is just simple wet blending. And the holes in the wings, try and catch all of the edges of those with the Emperor's Children. Okay, so you can see that we're now sort of getting a bit of blended tone. Over to Fulgrim. Down the centre of the wing, and then we'll get a little bit of the elfic flesh we were using earlier, and while it's still wet, we'll just on the side where the light's going to hit, so that's from this side, on the edges of the holes, dab a little bit of elfic flesh just to accentuate where the holes are, and I'll work my way around the rest of the wings and we'll be back shortly. So let's have a look at the work so far. So it's starting to look pretty groovy. Just a couple more things to finish them off. As I've done the tones, what I've also done is just run a little bit of the paler colour on the edges of all the rips so that you can just see them a little bit, and on the very edges of the wings just a little bit of the paler colour as well, just to highlight the edges of the wings. For all of the claws and talons, I'm going to start with Rhinox hide, giving a good coat, but if there are any recesses, trying to leave those in black. There's a little bit mixed on the palette here. And just gently stroke that onto every single talon. I'll be back in a few seconds. Now for the highlights on the talons, I'm actually going to go grab a little bit of the Rhinox hide, a little bit of the US Army dark green, and a little bit of the elfic flesh, and I'm going to make this sort of foul colour here. Okay, and then that's going to go on to onto the upper edges talon. And then get a bit more of the elfic flesh, take it to a really pale tone, and then just re-highlight the very edges. And I'll go around all of them and just complete that. So now we've got to the point where we have all the talons complete. And finally, to try and get those vibrant red eyes that we see on the cover art. So for the eyes, the first step is to get some Vallejo white. Which on the palette over here. And obviously a very fine brush. And these eyes are really tiny, so it's literally being very careful. And just putting the dots in the eyes, and now we've got to find a red that's vibrant enough to give us that red glow. So to go for those red glowy eyes, I'm going to try a little bit of vermilion with fluorescent magenta. And the magenta always is a nightmare to mix, but I think I've finally got there. So there's the magenta, and we'll just have a little bit of vermilion next door to it. And then we will mix the two together. Okay, repeat the other side, and that is the model virtually finished. So we've finally completed Cthulhu. I'm going to do the base separately in probably in a different video, but that is Cthulhu complete. So now let's stick him on the turntable and see what you think. And thus concludes the painting of the mighty Cthulhu. Really enjoying painting the Death May Die characters. Really love Call of Cthulhu in general. Anyway, I think I'm going to swap over to doing some of the characters in the next few videos, although I will still continue to do monsters intermittently. So I really do hope you're enjoying the series so far. If you do, please do like and subscribe, which only leaves me one thing left to say. Are we painting minis yet? Hell yeah! I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, guys.